and answering questions can be fun. So, anybody got anything? Yo.
Yeah, what's your background in? Like, what realm of physics?
Okay, so you've heard of nuclear physics? So splitting atoms, making bombs, reactors, all that fun stuff. Then there's another layer down inside that where we figure out what's inside protons and neutrons, which are things called quarks, and electrons are a kind of particle called a lepton, which there are two more of, muons and taus, which do us no good whatsoever, but they exist anyway, and was a huge surprise when they first discovered them. I work in that stuff, and there's sort of three branches who work in there. There are the theorists who do all of the crazy math. There are the experimentalists who run the giant machines and the accelerators where they smash the atoms apart to try to figure out how they work. And then my particular discipline was something called phenomenology, which is translating between the two. So, okay, you have this matrix on the theorist side, and then there's this bump in the graph on the experimentalist side. So which bump in the graph matches which term in the matrix? So that's what I did. And then I learned the hard way that the Ivy League produces all of the PhDs we need in this country to fill every faculty position, and there are a lot more places than the Ivy League producing PhDs, so enjoy finding a job in industry.
Amen.
Yes. Yes. The College of William and Mary, which actually, I was also on a floor hockey team and we actually won a couple of years. So my graduate student cohort, one of the guys was from Pittsburgh, so he grew up playing hockey on the street. And he was able to teach a couple of his roommates to be pretty good. And then the rest of us, we had like double the replacements any other team, so we exhausted them, except for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. They were a real pain. Yeah.
Are you lonely up there?
Not really.
Okay.
Why? Do you have something you want to come up and say?
I'm also a PhD physicist.
Oh, really? What's your subject?
My dissertation was in black hole formation.
Oh, cool.
And, like you, I figured out that that's a field where you have to wait for someone to die, and then you take their job.
Pretty much.
So I went into DoD contracting.
Okay, yeah. So specifically the reason I got out is for my dissertation, studies in CPT violation and 331 models, which, unless there are more PhD physicists than us in the room, he's probably the only other one who'll understand. I'm sorry? Possibly. So I made a prediction, and this was back in 2006, so the Large Hadron Collider hadn't turned on yet. And they hadn't discovered my prediction at the Tevatron. So I was able to do a quick back of the envelope calculation and figure out if the Large Hadron Collider could discover it if the Tevatron could not. And the answer was no. So I need to wait for the next thing after the Large Hadron Collider, which they haven't even finished fighting over what the name of that's going to be. So it probably won't get built until I hit retirement age at best. So that's one of those, okay, I'm going to take a visiting professor position at a small college in Michigan for 3 years because they kept having hiring emergencies, which was fun. But then the Great Recession happened and the college president went, well, everybody who's not tenured, there's the door. And then I worked construction for 15 months in the middle of the recession, which was useful, if not exactly what one expects to do with a doctorate in high energy physics. And through other trials and tribulations, I actually wound up employed by MAGFest for a while. as project manager for 4 months, and then as the warehouse guy for another 4 months, which is how I wound up driving a forklift. And now I have one of those software jobs that you can't really describe what you do to anybody except your coworkers, and even then sometimes that seems hard.
Give it a shot.
I'm sorry?
Give it a shot.
Okay, so my title is data scientist. I work for a telecom. So you know that you can roam on other networks, right? Well, for your network to know how that works, it needs to have the information in the database. However, it's the salespeople who negotiate this, and salespeople don't know much about databases as a general rule. They know Excel. So I get a spreadsheet, and I get to write a Python script that then translates it into the database, including correcting all of their errors. I've seen some fun misspellings of the nation of Luxembourg. And I once got a date just recently, well, sort of recently, of 2021-02-30. Yeah. While I was letting my code to work around that one test, I looked up if there had ever actually been a February 30th. There had. Sweden in 1712, because in 1708 they were too busy fighting Russia to remember that it was a leap year. But 1712 is not 2021, so thank you, idiot, who wrote that in a spreadsheet and broke everything. So that's what I do for a living. Yes?
I noticed you're running Ubuntu. Is Linux common in the Linux field?
Extremely.
You need the open source, I imagine.
Partly that, and partly we do a lot of intense programming and computation. We don't care about the UI very much, sometimes to our detriment. So, yes. And also it has very good features for, okay, I made this program, it works for me, now you can download and run it too, if you're doing some sort of crazy analysis that's similar to what I do. Yes?
Are there any scenes in movies where they're trying to like seem sciencey and it just like totally breaks your suspension of disbelief because they're getting terms wrong? And like, if so, can you think of any?
Oh, unobtainium?
Oh my God, that was awful.
Well, so I have to respect that one though, for the simple reason that at least they were honest about it.
Yeah, I mean, points for candor, but yeah, Avatar was unwatchable. That was horrific.
Let's see, the other one, I remember watching Armageddon, the movie where Bruce Willis saves the Earth from an asteroid by mining it and nuking it, or something nonsensical.
It makes sense to train miners to be drillers to be astronauts instead of the other way around.
And you know, you'd think that if Mir could form gravity by rotating, they'd be doing it already, and et cetera, et cetera. I just went home and wrote like 2 angry pages out of everything wrong with that movie in dense chicken scratch. It's still in a desk somewhere. But on the other hand, it depends on how important it is to the movie. So in Avatar, okay, we have unobtainium. That's an annoying name, but it's the thing that we're just mining because we really want it badly. Fine. Star Wars, they don't care about science at all. It's all what George Lucas or nowadays Disney thought looks pretty. I can live with that. It's fun to watch. Well, most of them are. Star Trek, on the other hand, okay, now the science is a living thing that they're interacting with and doing stuff with. Try to at least be self-consistent, although I realize that's hard across like 20 seasons and God only knows how many different writers. But try at least. Did that answer your question?
Sure. I watched Interstellar the other day. I don't know if that.
Okay, I have not, unfortunately, so I can't comment on that one. Yes?
Is there any media that you think really got it right scientifically?
Ooh. So The Expanse is interesting because where it's just the humans doing the thing, that's as good as I've ever seen done on space travel where you're trying to get there quickly, although even then there's an initial note at the beginning of just, we invented a really nice drive, we're moving on and using it now. But on the other hand, like the protomolecule and other things are just like, we're going to do magic. Okay, fine.
But in science fiction, that is the right way to do it. You say, okay, this is the thing, and you can't question that because this is the fiction part of the science fiction, but we're going to treat it consistently. So I'm pretty happy with The Expanse as well, at least for the self-consistency.
Yes. So far, I've only read the books, I must add. For a TV show, I really liked Babylon 5. The guy who wrote it was famous for saying that one of the ships flies at the speed of plot, so it gets there as fast as he needs it to. But he's honest about it, and whenever they were doing something where it didn't matter, they tried to get the physics right. So all of the ships move around like they're on ice skates and they can just rotate on their own axis and do whatever. So good job, guys. And they actually show the thrust working like it actually would to do that as a general rule. So I appreciate that. And also, the science is not the main point of it. It's a giant space opera and one of the first ones that had a 5-year plot plan. I saw you shaking your head about Babylon 5. Mind if I ask why?
Yeah, I'm in a constant battle with another friend of mine about Babylon 5 because I don't like it and she does.
Okay.
And I'm really much more of a Deep Space Nine fan.
Okay.
But that's it. I just don't like it.
That's fair.
Why not?
Who's dumb?
That's what I think of Deep Space Nine, but okay.
That's fair. To be fair, it's been a long time since I've seen it, so 10 years can make a big difference in someone's opinion. But yeah, at the time that I saw it, it just, I don't know. I felt like in the third season they had like the epic Lord of the Rings like massive end of the world thing, and then I had no interest in watching the remaining seasons.
Well, so part of what happened with that.
They got canceled, right?
Well, they thought they were going to get canceled at the end of season 4, so let's just finish everything up. And then, you wanted 5 seasons? Yeah, sure, you can have that 5th one. What do we do with season 5? Because we just wrapped nearly everything up now. Well, I had like 3 minor plot lines lying around. I guess we'll do those now. So yes, the 5th season definitely feels like an afterthought in some ways. Yes.
What, in your opinion, is the most exciting discovery for physics recently?
Well, since I worked on the Higgs Boson, or at least variations on the idea of it, the fact that that was discovered is super interesting to me, and I was very sad when the feed from CERN failed when they were doing the actual presentation back on July 4th in 2011, I think it was. I was trying to watch and wasn't able to. And the interesting thing about that is that it's actually a bit lighter than we expected, which raises the interesting feature that we might be in what's called a metastable universe. So hypothetically, in another few billion years, we might just collapse into a different state and we'd all be gone. But that hasn't happened yet, so I'm not going to worry about it. Theoretically. I think I've seen your hand up for a while, so.
Full disclosure, I'm a statistician, so apologies if it's slightly different, but my sister keeps insisting that we use jump. How do I tell her she's wrong?
Keep using what?
Exactly. It's a different statistical program. Jump. She's like, that's the best one. I can't think of another better one. I'm like, what?
I've never heard of it, so I have.
How do I convince her to use R? I guess is the primary question.
I have used R. It definitely has some advantages. I was, again, I was translating between the theorists and the experimentalists, so I didn't have to use it much except for my few years trying to get a job in data science, and then I landed one and I don't have to use it anymore.
What do you use as a data scientist?
Python.
Okay, that's fair.
I use, yes, I write Python all day, and my team lead is very thankful because he likes Go, which has strong typing.
Same.
The Python or the Go?
The Python.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had to take a course in grad school on R, and
Yes.
I never used it again.
Which,
So
now
it
that's,
was nice, but like,
I mean, if you want to get some fiddle diagrams or other ways of displaying statistical information, R is very good to make very exactly what you want without an excessive learning curve.
yeah.
And it is very powerful. Yes.
Oddly vague question, but do you have any superpower involving gravity or physics in general? What would it be?
Involving gravity or physics in general?
Reversing entropy.
Physics in general kind of.
Yes, reversing entropy. So, no, what he said would be absolutely lovely because entropy is a giant pain in my tuchus. For those of you who aren't familiar, entropy colloquially is the tendency of things towards disorder. It's actually a thermodynamics concept, which is why stuff can't flow from cold to hot without you doing work on it. But colloquially, it's the tendency for things to go towards disorder. And, you know, when I fix something, I don't want something else to break right away, but that seems to just keep happening.
The X-Man Iceman is pretty much the closest to having absolute control over entropy as I think anyone in pop culture really is. So yeah, everything that he can do as an Omega level mutant.
Hold on. Okay, good.
Any other questions?
So I have a friend that is convinced that thrust is very primitive and that like a human concept, and that magnetism and like reverse polarity is like the future of like travel and like space and stuff like that. In your guys' minds as physicists, is there any like gravitas to that sort of thing with magnetism as far as like space travel goes, or anything like that?
I will let the guy who has done gravity answer that one.
There actually is a semi-legit concept. Are you familiar with scramjets?
Yeah.
So basically, the problem with rockets is that you have to carry the fuel with you, and that makes them extremely inefficient.
Because the more fuel you carry, the more you have to burn to carry that fuel with you.
Yeah, so it's kind of a losing game. You have to have exponentially more fuel to get one more unit of thrust at the end. But the really cool part would be if you could pick up fuel on the way. And so there's this idea that you have basically a giant magnetic funnel that you project in front of your rocket, and the magnetic funnel would bring in particles from the interstellar medium or the intergalactic medium if you're actually going that far. And so that would be much, much more efficient than having to carry your fuel with you and accelerate your fuel right along with the rest of the rocket. The problem is that I actually just read this article like last week. They did some calculations on the density of the fuel particles that you can collect from the interstellar medium, and you would have to have an incredibly huge magnet in order to collect enough particles that you could actually run your rocket on it. So it looks like we've just recently ruled out magnetism as an integral part of rocket flight. So
Like on our planet, propel something into space?
So, okay. So the way we know how to propel things through space is we throw something that direction, so we go that direction. It's pure momentum.
Yeah.
Now, what you're talking about is maybe we can make the fields of the forces oppose each other. So if we could reverse gravity, that'd be great, but we don't know how to do that. Gravity just always sucks. I mean, it's nice that,
Especially
I
as a
don't go...
career.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like that I don't go floating off into space, but then again, that I also occasionally drop the casserole when I pull it out of the oven, and that sucks. So any other force, electricity or magnetism, for example, there's positive and negative, and they cancel out. And the planet has enough that they cancel each other out, and we're not going to be able to push off from it that way. Not for any great distance.
The other problem is magnetism becomes weaker faster
Yes.
than gravity does. So it is intrinsically a short-range force. So it's really like, I mean, as tempting as it would be to just like, magnets repel each other and, repel yourself from the Earth, because the Earth is a magnet, it's just too short range to do you much good besides like an initial bump.
Gravity is a 1 over r squared. Magnetism goes as 1 over r cubed. In general, depends on the exact configuration.
So for the people who didn't follow that 1 over r squared part, if you double the distance, gravity gets 1/4 as strong. If you double the distance for magnetism, it becomes 1/8 as strong. So that's how magnetism is going to lose out over gravity, which is a long-range force.
Actually, I had a question relating to magnetism. There's a website, can you look this up real quick? Was it
Possibly.
Polymagnet?
Sorry?
Polymagnet.
Okay. Uh-oh.
It's a company.
Is this going to be like Time Cube?
Huh?
Is this going to be like the Time Cube?
No. So basically, there's this research company that figured out how to put multiple magnetic fields into a single magnetic substrate. Basically, bring it up to its carry point, expose it to an external magnetic field, electromagnets.
Okay.
Let it cool
Yep.
off, and then it copies what you gave it.
Sure.
Long story short. I've been toying with that concept ever since I found out about these guys, and I've been wondering, well, they can have multiple like arrays of fields in different orientations.
Sure.
Who's to say you couldn't have it in like radially aligned, for example?
You can.
Instead of just like inside of a permanent magnet. And the question I've been kind of trying to figure out is, does it cancel out in the same sense that you get like 2 horseshoe magnets linked to each other?
Yes. It will. It looks differently, but it will cancel out in that same sense.
If you had 2 of them, for example, they wouldn't interact in that case, or would they? Because I imagine they would.
So they interact with each other, and then nothing else will, is basically how that goes.
I'm trying to remember. What's the principle behind that, where the magnetic fields actually don't even leave the object anymore? Because of that.
So it basically comes down to, classically speaking, there are no magnetic monopoles. So anything that goes out has to come back in. That's pretty much it. Now, fun fact, we know from quantum mechanics and Paul Dirac that there has to be at least one magnetic monopole in the universe.
But you only need one.
Which,
I would imagine there could only be one in theory.
there could be more, which I actually had a colleague when I was doing that visiting professor thing, who when he was in graduate school, his advisor had a different experiment that had a signal that looked just like a magnetic monopole had come through. So what do? You build an experiment that's 5 times as big, and you run it for 5 times as long. So you should see, 25 plus or minus about 5. They saw nothing. So maybe they had a very odd experimental error, or maybe there is just one and they happened to look at it at exactly the right time. Yes.
Are you following the James Webb Space Telescope?
So they launched it right before I started unloading the warehouse for MAGFest. So I will be as soon as I've rested up from helping build this event and tear it back down again. Yes.
I'm a space nerd.
Okay, just a general question. I'm kind of curious. I know I didn't read into it, but supposedly, you know, if you were to look back to close to like 200 million years after the Big Bang. And what I'm wondering is, how does that work? Like, do they have to know what direction to point it, I'm assuming?
You can point it anywhere.
Anywhere? I'm just curious. It just
Yeah, so the Big Bang took place everywhere. So you point your telescope in any direction and you're going to see the echoes of the Big Bang.
I believe there's a bit of a challenge along the plane of the Milky Way simply because there's Milky Way in the way.
Okay, so there might be something in the way, but
Yes.
you know, assuming you can, eliminate the foreground, any direction you look is going to be, eventually you'll see the cosmic microwave background, which is really the echoes of the fading Big Bang.
Which,
I didn't think about that like everywhere. Okay.
yeah, it has to be because it happened everywhere.
Gotcha. Okay, what you're saying is, okay, that's what you're looking for, not like maybe early stars or
Which-
nothing like that, but way before that. Even.
And even 10, 20 years ago, they were able to measure the temperature curve of the spectrum of the cosmic microwave background radiation, and it perfectly matches a black body, which is just a colorless thing that radiates depending on its temperature.
You know how your electric burner on your stove will glow up? That's black body radiation. And
But 2.7 Kelvin, so a lot colder. And it matches it so perfectly that, and they built, I forget which satellite it was, but they built one which was so sensitive that the experimental error bars were smaller than a line that humans could see when they actually drew the graph.
Yeah, I think the cosmic microwave background is something like 1 part in 10 to the 5, perfect match, and equal throughout any direction. But the very small variations are incredibly interesting because those give you a lot of detail on the very early universe. And I think a couple of Nobel Prizes have come from the small variations in the cosmic microwave background.
Gotcha. I guess I'm thinking too linear. It's like, okay, we're here, walk back that way. I think I'm not thinking the big picture kind of thing in my head, but that makes more sense.
That's true. It's just every direction you walk will be that. Yo.
So the journey on that, I know that for you love that other universe expanding, how does the Big Bang happening everywhere, but also space is expanding?
So space is expanding because the Big Bang happened, partly. So it happened, and that's why space is expanding, except nowadays we've also got, our best guess for what is going on is dark energy, which is also accelerating that expansion nowadays. Which is literally just, our best guess for what that is, hold on. Let's see.
It's a term in an equation. We have no idea what it means physically.
Yes. The history of dark energy is interesting because when Einstein first wrote general relativity, he kept getting universes that were expanding or contracting because that's how gravity works. And he's like, but this is 1916. We know that the universe has to be static because we've been thinking that for several hundred years or 1,000 years. So he threw in a term to make everything just nice and happy and static, and there's this random constant that's a capital lambda. And then about a decade after that, we discovered the Hubble expansion. Oh, oops, I didn't need that term. My bad, is what Einstein said in some sort of 1920s terminology, of course.
He called it his greatest blunder.
But of course, once a term like that can exist, if you're going to just say it doesn't, you have to tell us why, and we don't know why. So we have to assume it does at least a little bit. And nowadays we have discovered that the expansion of the universe is accelerating. That's our best guess for why. But the easiest calculation for what's actually causing this is if you look at the Heisenberg uncertainty equation, please have it here. Come on. Oh, yes. Okay.
Which one are you looking for?
The energy time one.
Oh.
Come on. Come on.
I mean, you could just say, look at this one and then trust us.
We could. Oh, come. That's what. I'm sure this will be fine on Wikipedia. If I can spell it right. Okay. So, sure.
The generalized expression of it up at the top would work.
It would. Okay.
Properly explain it. Okay, so do you want to do it?
Okay. Can everybody see this formula up here? The only one that's on the board right now?
Okay, you're saying sigma.
Don't.
Sigma whatever is greater than equal.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, I can
Yep. Wrong way.
Next question.
Maybe not quite that large. Oop, nope, not that small either. Oof. Here we are. Here we are. There we go. There we go. Okay, so you can imagine that the first term is your error in energy, and your second term is your error in the time that you measure it.
All the way around.
Well, I mean, this 2 sigmas, okay? So you can measure the energy very accurately if you take a long time, or you can spend a very short time and you're going to have a larger error bar in the energy. Now, it turns out that there is a vacuum energy, which is, let's flip this inequality. For a brief period of time, you can violate conservation of energy by a tiny amount. Longer time, smaller amount of energy. Shorter time, larger amount of energy. Cool with that so far? At least within the context of quantum mechanics insanity? Okay, so that's vacuum energy, and you can add up how much there should be at all of the wavelengths of all of the forces, and that's going to act exactly like dark energy. There's a tiny problem. If you do that, you wind up with a number that is 120 orders of magnitude too high.
That's a lot.
To put it in context, we could never make it out the door of this room if that was actually how much dark energy there was. It would be running away from us too quickly.
Where dark energy is, the faster the universe is expanding, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So,
That's accelerating.
yes,
There's an increase.
correct. So, excellent question. If you figure out the answer, I'll be happy to congratulate you on your Nobel Prize. So there is some dark energy, Einstein's term, which he called his greatest blunder, but is still there, but not nearly as much as we would expect from quantum mechanics. Why? Congratulations. You've just run into one of physics' greatest mysteries right now. We're not done figuring out everything in the universe. Far from it.
Otherwise, we would have anti-gravity stuff.
Possibly, yes.
So what do you think is going to be one of the most important problems we have yet to solve in physics?
In physics?
Or just science in general, even math.
Reconciling quantum mechanics and gravity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's how we wound up with string theory, which is a very interesting idea, but it's also not exactly a science anymore because we can't experimentally disprove it. No, seriously, it has
I hate string theory, so
it has the Alice's Restaurant problem. You can pick any universe you can think of, you can describe it with string theory, which is great, but it also means that you can never come up with an experiment which is like, okay, string theory says no to this, we've run it, we're still good, or not.
Yeah, when you can make your theory say anything, it's basically the same as saying nothing.
It,
right?
it becomes
Because-
useless as an explanatory device.
Yes.
Because for those of you who haven't lived and breathed this, the whole point of science is that you can ask the universe how it works by running an experiment, which will falsify your theory. At least if your theory is incorrect. If your theory is correct, it won't falsify it. That doesn't mean your theory is right, it just means that that experiment didn't falsify it. After a while, if you do that a few dozen times, you're like, okay, this one's good enough to work with every day.
Let's go along with. So I've got twin 12-year-old nephews, and I was trying to teach them, they're watching Star Trek, I was trying to teach them about time dilation.
Okay.
They kind of stumbled on the twin paradox, and I'm trying to figure out a way to explain why the brothers are different ages after the Logos and ship comes back without throwing math at them. Do you have like a simple, clean explanation that can because they're bugging me nonstop about this, they're idiots.
Okay, so where are they getting stuck?
The stuck part is they get that, okay, one goes off speed of light, comes back, now the person that was in the ship is younger than the other one. They don't get why the one that went off the ship is younger than the other one.
Okay, so that is a special relativity thing. What is special about special relativity is we don't have an accelerating universe or reference frame. Okay?
And there's no gravity.
Right. Because that causes accelerations. So you literally are on ice going at some fraction of the speed of light. So the twin that stays on Earth, he's just moving at a constant speed. Good to go. The twin that flies off and then comes back. So he flies off at a constant speed, good to go. Comes back at a constant speed, good to go. But he had to turn around. So he accelerated. So that's how we can tell which one of these stayed in the non-accelerating reference frame the whole time. So that's the one that we have anchored at an age, and the other one comes back younger.
So is it, because I actually said, I was like, oh, the one that felt acceleration and then came back with.
Yes.
When he said the clock, I was like, ah, shit.
Nope,
They were going on like feeling acceleration. I was like, I don't know if that's right.
I wouldn't call that a perfect answer, but you were on the right track, so good job. Yes?
I came in late just now, so this may have been asked already. But
That's okay.
I've been looking for a simple explanation of the relationship between time and gravity, if that can be done.
Yikes.
Okay. My best recommendation for a start is go to your local library or possibly used bookstore. Look up Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time and go from there.
But in like the situation like of this space right now, what's your breakdown? Like how can you possibly define that?
The picture of reality that is given to us by special and general relativity is that you don't have 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time. You have 4 dimensions of a thing called space-time, and you can mix your directions together. So one of the classic thought experiments is imagine an ant crawling around on a beach ball, right? So the ant feels like the ant, he or she, I guess it's probably a she, right? Because all the
Usually, yeah.
So she, the worker ant, feels like she's just crawling forwards. Yet those of us who can watch the whole beach ball see that she actually comes around in a full circle. So in effect, we've combined the directions of forward and downwards as she walks around the beach ball, right? So in sort of the same context, you can mix which direction is time and which direction is space. So imagine yourself, in deep space, just, in the lotus position, meditating, you're not doing anything at all, right? So the direction that you are moving is time. But you could have another astronaut out in deep space who is also not doing anything, but has a velocity relative to you. And for that person, their time actually is mixed with your space.
So since they're traveling through space in addition to time, they're traveling through less time relative to you, which is the time dilation thing.
Yeah, and so you have
Yeah.
the curved space-time of the beach ball that we talked about, and a combination of space and time into a four-dimensional entity called space-time. And
Or 11 if you're doing string theory, but let's not go there.
string theory sucks. All right. So those are probably the two concepts that you need to reconcile simultaneously to say, how does time relate to gravity? Space can be curved, like living on a beach ball, and space and time are inextricably mixed together. So that is, I would say, your nutshell version of time and gravity.
Does one cause the other?
It's a house of cards. You have to have one and the other, or they both fall down.
I see.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Why is inertial mass and gravitational mass the same? Inertial mass is the difficulty at which you can push something, and gravitational mass is the amount of that it attracts you as an object that's massive and attracting towards it. But why are those two numbers the same?
So this is another case where I'm going to say, if you can figure out the answer, I will be happy to congratulate you on your Nobel Prize.
But it probably relates to the Higgs boson.
Yes.
The Higgs field, and the particle that gives rise to the field is the Higgs boson, is what, basically, it's kind of like a molasses, and it's what gives particles their mass. So the Higgs field slows down particles or makes it harder for particles to accelerate, and that phenomenon we recognize as mass. So being that that's the origins of at least inertial mass, the answer has to lie somewhere within Higgs boson physics.
But again, Higgs boson is quantum mechanics, and now we're talking about gravity, and figuring out how those two things play together is this outstanding open challenge of physics.
Arguably the outstanding open challenge.
Yes. So we'd love to give you an answer,
That's
but
as much of an answer as we have.
we don't have one past that. But yes, you're right. It is absolutely strange that the gravitational charge is exactly the same as the inertial mass, but they are, or at least they're always in an exact proportion with each other in every case that we've seen. Any others? Sure.
One thing I have a hard time understanding is the Earth or any sphere, it spins faster at the equator versus the top.
Yes.
Can you break it down for me? I just don't, my mind just can't understand that. How does that work?
Okay.
Does
So
anyone have a ball? I think that would be the easiest way to.
hold on.
Say it comes under like angular momentum and
Hold on. I got this one.
Do I just show a picture of like latitude?
Coriolis force.
I think that's getting more complicated than
Well,
it needs,
no,
but-
just the picture of it.
Fair.
It's the same principle as a record spinning. The inside spins slower than the outside. It's the distance that needs to travel in the same amount.
Ah, yes. Okay. So that's not the most perfect picture, but it'll do the job. So pretend we're looking down on the Earth at the North Pole, which is right where this thing's starting. Okay? So the Earth the rotational rate in terms of angle is the same all around the Earth. But the equator is much further out from the central axis. So the physical speed in like meters per second or miles per hour has to be a lot greater, because it's covering the same angle at a much larger distance away from the center axis. Does that help?
Yeah, I think I'm connected.
All right. Or think about going to the North Pole, right? You say hi to Santa Claus, and there's like the big like barber pole, sticking right up out of the North Pole. You can, grab the pole sticking out and run around in a circle, and you've just gone like all the way around the world, but you only went a couple of feet, right? Then, take your ship down to the equator, and you have to go 24,000 miles. No, 24,000?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like 24,000 miles to go all the way around the equator, to go around the world. But all of the Earth, minus the oceans, basically spins around as a solid body. So the little area that you run around the North Pole turns in 24 hours, and the entire equator turns in 24 hours. So you have to go way, way faster to keep up with the equator than you do with the little circle that you run around the North Pole.
So both cases you have the same number of degrees per second or minute or whatever, but in one case you have to get a lot further in miles per hour.
I didn't know this overthinking it, it's just all about the distance.
Yes. You get this, you remember a merry-go-round from when you were a kid, or maybe you're young enough that they'd already removed them from playgrounds. But in the middle, like the whole thing's spinning at the same rate, but in the middle, it doesn't have nearly as far in terms of number of feet to go around, whereas out on the edge, if you happen to be there when some gorilla starts spinning it, you're going to have an awful hard time holding on. Same thing. You're welcome. Yes.
Yes, sir. Let's say you're in a spaceship, right?
Okay.
And you somehow got sucked into the horizon of a black hole. It's a big black hole, so you don't get to slip anybody.
Okay.
It's still beyond the horizon. Is the fact that you can go fast, if you can go faster than light in your ship, does that get you out?
It depends on how far beneath the event horizon you are.
You just entered into science fiction.
Yes.
So
the
you're writing the story at this point, so you tell us.
So the event horizon is simply the distance from the black hole at which the escape velocity is the same as the speed of light. Okay, so if you can go faster than light, now you have a higher escape velocity. There'll still be some distance at which you can't escape. What that is depends on how fast you can go.
Okay.
So it'll be a smaller super event horizon, or whatever you want to call it, than the event horizon, but it'll still be there.
Okay.
But you can't accelerate anything faster than the speed of light in the universe where we actually live. So
Also true.
If you're talking about going faster than the speed of light, we've exited the universe where we live and we're now somewhere else. So yeah. So you're already rewriting the laws of physics and asking us, like, how do the laws of physics dictate when you're already rewriting them? Like, the question is kind of impossible to answer.
I'm done. I'm sorry. The reason I asked it in the first place is I figured, because I was thinking that a black hole distorts the lines of space-time such that there is no way out, regardless of what speeds you're able to achieve or what have you.
Yes?
It depends on how fast you can go, but at some point it will exceed whatever speed you pick. If you pick infinite speed, then that's no longer a thing, but you're also going at an infinite speed, so you have other problems.
Yeah. In the universe where we live, not only is the escape velocity greater than the speed of light, but remember how I was talking about you mix the directions together?
Yeah.
Inside the event horizon of the black hole, the direction that is towards the black hole becomes mixed with the direction that's forwards in time. So it is as inevitable to go towards the black hole as it is to go forwards in time. So if you go forwards in time, you are actually moving towards the black hole, and there's no such thing as the direction away from the black hole. Every direction that you go, you're actually approaching the black hole, because all of space-time is actually fully wrapped around you, and you are in such a curved space-time that every direction is towards the black hole. So, fun fact, if you have fallen into a black hole, the way to survive the longest is to do nothing at all. Because any way you try to accelerate, you're accelerating towards the black hole.
Interesting.
It's a very Buddhist kind of outlook. So ponder that, if you will.
Pink shirt or pink and blue? Yes.
It's going to be a dumb question, but with perpetual motion machines, so with gravity and magnetism, they don't have any energy input, but they have, like, they can have kinetic energy output, right? So if you were to propel something using magnetism, like a opposite, like, polar force, you would be creating energy out of nothing, right?
No. You can't create energy.
There are energy inputs. Anybody who shows you a perpetual motion machine is just hiding them. Very cleverly, but they're hiding them.
Typical perpetual motion machines are just really good at minimizing friction. So they'll go for a long time, but...
Long enough to close a sales deal.
Exactly that long, yes.
Black holes were just brought up, and one of the things that was mentioned is like, parallel dimensions. How did that come about? How did the concept of the possibility of parallel dimensions hiding behind a black hole come about? Where does that come from? Is that purely the realm of science fiction, or was there some sort of like actual, real scientific rationality behind that?
So there's like 3 answers to that. That's okay.
I have enough mental capacity for one. Let's go.
Okay. So we have this universe. As near as we can tell, it was made in a Big Bang. Why does there have to have only been one Big Bang? There could be other universes. Same process that created that. Answer 2. So some folks went, okay, so gravity is just distortion in space-time. Can we explain electricity and magnetism the same way? Well, if you have a 5th space-time dimension, yes. And you can, eventually you wind up with string theory, so we won't go that far. But you can, but if we just do, say, gravity and electricity and magnetism, you can do it in 4 space and 1 time dimensions, intermixed. And it turns out that that 4th space dimension is very tightly wrapped up. So you can have interesting things going on that way. So let me see.
I think the quickest bridge, which is a deliberate pun, the quickest bridge to getting where you're trying to go is that with a black hole, you frequently see like a metaphor for gravity being like a big rubber sheet, and you drop a bowling ball in it, and the little balls will roll around, right? Well, a black hole is what happens if you don't just have like a bowl-shaped bottom, but you actually pinch it to an infinite point. And once you pinched space-time to an infinitesimally small point like that, you can connect it to another infinitesimally small point, and that one connects to a black hole on the other side.
And then you got a wormhole.
And that's how you construct, in principle, a wormhole. And general relativity is perfectly fine if you just hand it a universe that has a wormhole that already exists in it. It's just, okay, we're just going to roll with that.
As soon as you start trying to engineer one, however.
But trying to create one gets real sketchy. So
Yeah.
That's where we go from solidly backed physics to deeply speculative physics is trying to create a wormhole that didn't already exist. So that's about as close or as fast as I can get you to other dimensions and
Specifically
complex
through a black
spacetimes.
hole.
Through a black hole.
Yeah, okay, I appreciate it.
Time.
We mentioned dark energy earlier. It gives me real like luminiferous ether vibes. So how seriously do you think we should take it?
I actually gave a talk early in my grad school career called Phlogiston, Ether, and Dark Matter. I'm one of the last holdout cranks that still hates dark matter and dark energy. The results that indicate that we have dark matter and dark energy are deeply, deeply processed. You have to go through many, many steps until you arrive at those conclusions. So I prefer to say that we've just got our laws wrong instead of the universe wrong.
Are you one of these modified Newtonian dynamics guys, or?
I actually wanted to do modified Newtonian dynamics,
Okay.
if anybody's heard of that, for my dissertation, but I noticed that every time I brought it up, my advisor would suddenly get really interested in his shoes or like what was going on outside his window of his office. And so I eventually got the point that like that was not going to happen.
At least not with that advisor, and God help you if you try to change one.
Yeah. And I went to a third-rate dump of a grad school, so he was the only one who was anywhere close to the kind of stuff that I wanted to study. Yeah, so dark energy, like it's really, really hard to arrive at an experimental result that says you have dark energy. Yeah.
In the lab, definitely.
Yeah. So
in important ways, they are us labeling our ignorance of something that we didn't expect. So dark matter, for example, is Jupiter takes, 13 years or something like that to orbit around the sun? Our Earth only takes 1. What's the difference? Jupiter is much further out, so it doesn't have to move sideways nearly as quickly to avoid hitting the sun. That's what an orbit is. But if you measure how quickly things go around in a galaxy, you get this weird effect where, okay, they're actually kind of slow in the middle, and then they increase in speed going out, and then they're just kind of level all the way out to the edge of the galaxy. So the only way we have to explain that without changing Newton's laws of gravity or screwing around with what Einstein wrote down is to say that we have a lot of mass sitting out there. But the mass we're used to looking at, we can literally look at because it emits photons and we can see it, and this stuff isn't doing that, so that's why it's called dark matter. And then they found this other stuff, which, as he said, after a lot of processing, it looks like the universe is accelerating, and so we're going to call that dark something. Well, okay, if there's this vacuum energy that's pushing everything apart from everything else, that'll do it, so we'll call it dark energy. Again, this is one of those in, if we're really lucky, a generation, probably a lot longer than that, we'll actually figure out what's going on, and it'll be super cool and interesting, and they'll look at those terms like we do, phlogiston and ether. But it's the best we've got right now, or at least it's what's commonly accepted in the community right now as satisfying Occam's razor. Everybody familiar with that? Anybody want me to explain Occam's razor? Okay, so Occam's razor is if you have multiple explanations for something, pick the ones that's the simplest. Now, what defines simplest? Congratulations, you just started another debate, but there you go.
personally, I think modified Newtonian dynamics is a lot more plausible than 70% of the universe being something that we magically have no idea what it is. But it's
70? I thought we were at 95.
70% dark matter and 20-something% dark.
Other way.
70% dark energy, 20-something% dark matter. And then everything that we can actually see is like 5% of the universe. Which really, we should just say, hey, look, our equations give us a factor of 20 error. Hello? But yeah, we're too scared to just say like we've got something fundamentally wrong, and so we invent a patch to make it work.
Well, that, and as soon as you start telling Congress that you don't know what the universe is, they stop funding you.
Grim but true. I think you had your hand up a while? Yeah.
We got here a little late, but you guys covered the James Webb.
We did.
Briefly.
But we're willing to go again.
There could be another question about it.
You guys are really excited for anything we should be like watching out for the next few years? I know there's like a ton of experiments or something.
So the James Webb is substantially larger than Hubble, but it's also, if I remember correctly,
It's looking at
slanted.
longer wavelengths.
So it's more in the infrared.
Infrared, and I think maybe down to like micrometers band.
So anyway, like it's looking at a different regime of the electromagnetic spectrum, which means it's looking at different physics than Hubble is, because it just wants to look at lower energy phenomena or more redshifted phenomena. So it is focused on interstellar dust, which glows in infrared, the cosmic microwave background, I guess.
Yes.
If it goes down to microwave wavelengths, easy for me to say.
It's 11:30.
Yeah, it's been a long day. So I think the most exciting thing is going to be the surprises.
Yes.
The things that we did not anticipate at all.
Have you heard of Hanny's Verwarp? So there's this program where you can just start looking at pictures from Hubble or other astronomical things if you happen to have spare time, which a lot of us don't, and see what you can see. And this young lady from the Netherlands just came across this image that was nothing, that it wasn't a galaxy. We don't know what it is. And it got named after her. So you can look that up. I think it's Hanny. And so, yeah, just the stuff that we don't expect is going to be glorious.
And that's H-A-N-I, by the way, isn't it?
I thought it was Hanny, but
Crap, never mind.
Look up.
Try it until you find something weird.
Look up VERWOORP. That'll probably get you there.
So the Hubble, I think the most remarkable image from Hubble is the Hubble Deep Field, which Hubble was pointed at a patch of sky that, as far as we knew, was just empty. There was just nothing there. But the director of the Hubble program actually he had a lot of like discretionary time because he was, the big chief in charge. So he put all of his discretionary time into just taking an image of an empty field of space. And as it turns out, he saw thousands of galaxies, which was totally unanticipated.
Oh, Verwerp. I misspelled that. Okay.
Oh, you found it. Oh, you're right. Bummer. I'm usually good at remembering weird spellings, but yeah.
So yeah, just was looking through Hubble pictures, came across this thing that we'd never seen before.
Yeah, the green stuff. Like, what is this?
Didn't expect it. Saw it anyway. Just like the first time we started looking for planets around other stars, we got when we built our models of how solar systems work, we of course built them on ours because that's a solar system we could see. And then we saw a whole bunch of things that were 10 times the size of Jupiter at orbital distances less than Mercury. And we were like, well, how the heck did that happen? But clearly it does, because that's what we've got.
Isn't that the most common solar system,
So that's the most common we can see, because that's the kind
Because
that's
they're
easiest to see when you're looking for planets around another star. Because they give the biggest signals.
Yeah, they're the easiest to detect, but you have to do some really fine scale statistics, probably in R.
Yes, something as big as Jupiter, close to a planet, close to a star, you get a nice big signal. Us, at our distance, really hard to see. Needle in a haystack level.
Yeah, I mean, it took 20 years between the discovery of the first extrasolar planet and when we started discovering planets, like Earth size and stuff.
Roughly, yes. And that's one of the fields that's actually still getting funded fairly well. Yeah. Yes.
I have to head out, but I wanted to say thanks for all of this. One last quick question. Related to this picture here with the green stuff, was that galaxy identified? Do we know what perspective this was taken from?
Well, it's taken from the perspective of Earth.
Right, sorry, I guess the wrong question.
We've seen a lot of spiral galaxies.
It says
and that one looks pretty typical.
Yeah,
at least to
it
my
says
eye.
it's IC2497.
Okay. And IC is a pretty old catalog. So if that galaxy appears in the IC catalog, then we've known about it for quite some time, and it must be fairly bright and fairly large.
Yep. Yes.
unrelated, but a physics question. What determines what electromagnetic radiation material is translucent, transparent?
What determines whether or not?
Atmosphere, visible light goes to the atmosphere, right?
Yes.
But like infrared bounces off of it.
Like radio waves.
So it depends on what it's made out of and what its resonant frequencies are. So water, you shoot visible light through water, it doesn't react. You shoot infrared through it, it starts heating up.
Oh.
That's it. And actually in World War II, and more recently, they were working on radar and they kept going to smaller wavelengths because you get better pictures that way. Until at one point they went, and we just found out that this wavelength bounces straight off of water and we can't see anything because everything just looks like a fog to us. But then they realized that they could heat it up that way and they invented the microwave oven. So that was still a win.
Didn't they do that by accident?
Yes.
So one of the physicists walked by. A lot of our discoveries in physics happened because somebody totally violated all safety protocols. So a physicist walked right by the business end of the microwave emitter.
Hey, my candy bar melted.
And the candy bar in his pocket melted. So yeah, that's
the start of the microwave oven.
And I've seen military-grade, high-powered microwave emitters, and those things are terrifying. You have to point them at a mountain because that's the only thing that's going to stop them.
On the other hand, if you've seen the Mythbusters where they tried to cook a turkey with one, it didn't. And that's because they want it to go through the water so they can see things far away instead of, heating it up.
None.
I strongly recommend it as a medium of exchange if that's really what you want to do, but as an investment, not so much. It's one of those things, if you have money to throw away, congratulations, some of them will probably succeed, but I don't have money to throw away, so I don't.
Above and beyond that, the crypto economy is as thoroughly riddled with criminality as you can possibly get. We like to say, like, the Mercury and the moon is a concept called saturation cratering, which basically means if you want to try to get any more craters on the moon or Mercury, you basically have to wipe out an existing crater to create it. The crypto economy has saturation corruption. If you're going to try to create a new scam in the crypto economy, you basically have to drain the suckers from some other scam in order to create your own scam from it. For a while, Iceland was actually spending more electricity on crypto mining than on homes.
Well, it helps when you have all that cold weather to help cool the machines with, but...
And Iceland has abundant geothermal energy, so they had extraordinarily low prices for energy, and so all the crypto miners moved their rigs to Iceland for the cheap electricity. But yeah, crypto is absolutely a scam. It is absolutely a pyramid scheme. If you make money on it, then you have swindled someone else. So, I've had, some recommendations. Oh man, you can make some money doing this or that or the other. But I feel like my ethics won't allow me to really invest in crypto. So that's my take on it anyway.
Actually, I have another question kind of related to the graphics cards and electromagnetism.
Okay.
So knowing that we have ray tracing graphics cards now,
Yes.
and it's the computational equivalent of light in all cases, you could apply that to other parts of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yes.
How long do you think it will be before we see like a video game or some similar simulation that actively uses that as a so say, for example, you can see within our visible spectrum, right? But then you shift it over, and then all of the materials, the virtual materials in the game, you would give them the properties of the various transparencies of their real-life counterparts. Do you think that would have some practicality?
I remember the X-ray gun from Perfect Dark, where you could shoot through walls. So at least, yeah. I blew away tons of those little alien guys.
I'm talking in terms of like literal physics applications here. Maybe for testing things.
We're already doing that.
Yeah, for like just physics simulations, yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure there's already stuff out there by far, but I haven't seen anything that makes use of those new graphics cards.
Well, that's because we can't afford them because all the crypto miners are buying them.
I feel like this is an artistic question. Like, if there's a game that would be fun to do that.
So I remember hearing one recently. I forget what it was, but you could do some shift and you can go through certain walls in one side of the shift but only others in the other side. I forget exactly what it was, but you'll have to look that up. Or maybe it was time traveling, like this wall is broken in the future so you can get through and then you had to get back to the past for the bridge to still be there. I forget what it was, unfortunately. I can't give you any more hints than that.
I remember seeing one recently where they actually demonstrate hue shifts as a function of movement.
Okay.
It's something here. It's been about a year or two since I've actually seen it. But I distinctly remember, imagine if you're closer to the speed of light, and by simply moving, your everything else around you just changes color.
Yes.
Yeah. The physics and the computation is already there for scientific applications. So as soon as somebody figures out a fun game mechanic, they can do it. They could do it tomorrow.
And
I just can't think of any.
Slightly related, back in the 70s, there were vector graphics arcade machines that did not do just raster. They were actually doing vector graphics. We might actually have some down in the arcade hall. I haven't gone to look yet. Anything else? Yes.
You're falling into a black hole and you can only take one thing with you. What is it? An atomic clock.
Okay. Ooh, let's see. I'm gonna say Moby Dick, so I pay attention to my surroundings instead of reading the book I have with me.
That's my favorite book, by the way. So
No offense,
it'd be a little different experience for me. Although maybe I might revise my answer to a spacesuit. I don't know if that
Okay, raw survival taken care of. Got it.
So thus you're falling into a supermassive black hole. It's not going to matter much because you're not going to spend very much time inside the event horizon.
The problem is that your head is getting pulled at 10 times Earth's gravity and your feet are getting pulled at 100 times. And that doesn't do good things to, well, anything.
Over to spaghetti dinner then.
Okay.
Yeah. So the difference in a gravitational field from point to point is what we call the tidal force. And the net result is that you get squished in this direction and this direction, and you get stretched in this direction. So it's really not a good time at all.
And our kind helper is telling us that it's time to go. So thank you very much, everybody. You can feel free to find me all weekend. I'll be wearing this. And thank you very much for keeping us on track. Have a good evening and wonderful MAGFest, everybody.